Has language lost its value in the digital age, or are we entering a new era of communication?
Welcome to Voice Notes Suck with Jay and Dave.
Language shapes how we think, how we feel, and how we connect, but it's constantly evolving. From slang and culture to AI and translation, today we're exploring what happens when words move faster than we do.
Dave from down south, mate. Series 3, episode 4, Spokenomics. The changing landscape of language. I found this fascinating, especially growing up in the north, in a little town, and having kids actually. Kids are a real insight into the changing landscape of language. I will tell you that. Some things are trendy, some things kind of come and go, almost like, the Riz Skibbity toilet malarkey. That's kind of fading away again. But things do get left behind, which I found massively interesting. And if you were to compare modern language now to, say, the 90s, I bet you'll find it's vastly different. And my friend who teaches English, my friend Liam Davis, fantastic gardener, amazing author, just for the record, check him out, Liam Davis. He's got some amazing things to say about how kind of urban English, if you will, is one of the most popular spoken languages now in the UK, if I've got that right. He'll correct me if I haven't.
It's kind of the difference between like colloquialism, slang, dialect and language, isn't it? And certainly in the UK, it's such a hot pot. There's so many different dialects, accents, that it's impossible to keep track of everything, and how, every third town around the country has got a different word for bread roll, for example. Yeah, I mean, modern culture has a huge impact, and with the rise of the internet and everything that goes along with that, you're going to see that the patterns of some of that slang language or the urban language, maybe, whichever it happens to be. But the patterns of that language are picked up and broadly accepted within society much faster than that's ever happened before.
Yeah, dude, I don't even think it's not slang language. It's actually urban English. It's recognised in colleges and universities now, which is amazing. I mean, that's just the pure evolution of language. I mean, look at rhyming. Rhyming has completely changed over these last 10 years. Rhyming has become quite unconventional, and it's become more focused on the shape of the sound rather than the actual literal rhyming word. Like cat and bat, it might be cat and what, or something along those lines. But I'm not a rapper. But I recognise it. But it's valuable language. It's so valuable. And it's clearly making a massive impact in the world, don't you think?
Yes. I mean, I'm not disagreeing at all, Jay. I think they all fall into the same kind of thing, like slang, dialect, urban English. All of these things kind of fall into the same category of developing language, but some of them develop and take over larger areas, for example. And this links into what you were saying about certain musicians, and I think we've got Eminem to thank for a lot of how we rhyme with the sounds that a word makes coming out of your mouth and the mouth shapes rather than the word itself. He drove a lot of that, orange being the primary example. And if you type in Eminem orange, you will see what I'm talking about if you just type that into any search engine. But how much do you think music has driven the acceptability of urban English to the point where it's seen as a language. And I think music is a massive driving force in the development of language, wherever you go in the world.
Yeah, it is. Music carries culture. Music is a vehicle for things you may not get to experience. You have to remember as well, though, we do have social media now. That's powerful. That is powerful. It used to only come from music, but now I feel it can come from video as well quite quickly. Like we were talking about in our other podcast episode about, you know, memes. It's just one of those things that moves and accelerates so quickly now. And as a society and as a multicultural world, which is what we're becoming, I find it just magical that we are in this stage of our evolution as a civilization.
It's fascinating, and there's some real challenges that are going to come alongside of this, and I can think of a few, as well as a lot of potential benefits as well. Do you know they found a bone flute that was maybe 60,000 years old? I think it was something like that. I saw a video or read something recently, and the people talking in that video were talking about how they reckon humanity, or Homo sapiens, communicated in music far before they communicated in language. The question that your last comment made me think of is, do you think we're moving towards a homogenization of language, and we're at risk of losing languages because of the multicultural society we live in and the ability, want or need to communicate in a version of English?
I don't know. For me, the most important thing is being able to communicate. If that homogenisation became music, I'd be happy. Communicating through music is far deeper than words alone. I don't think that we are, though. It's something that we don't need to worry about, in my opinion. You never know, though. English is a very common language, but then so is Mandarin and French, and we might end up with only a few languages possibly. But what does it matter at the end of the day if it means that we can still communicate and get our messages across and move forward with communication? Do you think it really matters?
I think a lot of culture, heritage and history is wrapped up into language. And I think we would lose a lot of things if we lose a language. And I think we've lost lots of things through the loss of various languages over time. I also agree that more communication between more people is a good thing. I think it's interesting to talk about these things. Do I worry about it? I don't know if worry is the right word. I like to consider these things because I think they can be impactful on a lot of people.
You said an interesting thing there. You said we've lost things over time. What are you referring to?
I mean, we don't know what we've lost because we don't have access to it anymore. But history, culture, music, stories, law, all of these things, if you lose a language, you lose everything that's associated and attached to it, unless it's been translated into another language.
I think my question there then is, how much of it has been translated and how useful is it in moving forward? Is it just to learn about the past, which is always handy? Is it to learn lessons? Is it to carry on important aspects of religion? What do you think we've got going on there?
It's difficult, isn't it, Jay? Because we don't know what we've lost, and potentially all of that stuff has been translated from some lost languages, but not others. And look at the Egyptians, for example, the ancient Egyptians. Like, how little do we know about hieroglyphs and what they represent and what they mean and what stories they were trying to tell, what information they were trying to pass down? Like, there's a lot wrapped into that we don't know and we will never know unless we can work it out logically. And even then we could be wrong because we're taking our assumptions from today and passing it back on to images that were created thousands of years ago. It's really hard to quantify because we don't know what we've potentially lost. But the things for me that I think are important are culture, heritage, and history. Like, what lessons could we potentially learn? What culture existed that we're now no longer aware of? Have we lost forms of music? Have we lost types of art? And I think potentially we risk that if we lose a language. And look, it's going to happen. Language naturally progresses over time. Languages progress over time, and they change and they deviate and they move from the standard. So no matter how much we talk about it, it's kind of an inevitability.
Yes, it is, because change is inevitable and things evolve. Language is evolving, we're evolving, music has evolved. And I think what we're talking about here more than anything is preservation. There's always going to be someone out there prepared to preserve something for someone. I don't think we're ever at risk of fully losing anything, to be honest. It does make me wonder, though. I saw an article recently about a man who is really, really going for it to prove that we'll actually live in a simulation based on the observation theory of particles and waves, that old chestnut. But he's really close to potentially showing us that we could be a simulation and that what we observe appears rather than it always being there. So I found that very interesting. Don't you, David?
Look at you trying to distract me with a quantum rabbit hole, which I will quite happily get distracted by. I did see a clip about quantum recently, which was a professor that said the purpose of his class was to teach his class that no one knows anything about quantum, which was interesting and a unique take on the field. Like, we don't know. It's theoretical anyway, I don't need to get distracted by quantum. I think the evolving nature of language, it's important to consider what could be lost, especially if we come back to a homogenization of language. If everyone starts speaking some form of English around the globe, then that is a risk. And I just wanted to discuss it. I think we've done that quite succinctly, and I think we're aware that it's a risk. And, we preserve more stuff today than we arguably ever have.
I don't think it's a risk because we've got music and art, and that's the best way to communicate anyway.
I think we've lost lots of music and art over our time, and that's where it's a potential risk. But yeah, I think we've exhausted that. So if we don't move to a homogenized language, a generic language that the whole globe can speak, how do you find the interaction between different languages? Is that something that interests you at all?
I'll tell you what does interest me, Dave. The fact that you can use AI translators. They sell them on TikTok Shop. You can get like a little earbud that you put in, and when you speak in your language, it translates it into the other person's language if they've got an earbud in. I mean, if that's not communicating between languages efficiently, I don't know what is. Would you try something like that? Do you think it's lazy, or do you think it's just a way of communicating?
I'd definitely try something like that and explore it and see what the outcomes would potentially be. I find it fascinating because often there's not a direct translation between languages. And when you speak to people, like, which we're lucky enough to do, being part of a global creative community, when you speak to someone when English is their second language, they can find it difficult to express the emotions because it doesn't quite match up. So whilst you'll get the context of what people are saying from something like that, I'm not sure you get the emotions and the feeling behind what they're saying. I think it's fantastic. I really do. I think it's a wonderful tool, and I think it will help a lot of people. There's computers being advertised now where that's wrapped into the video technology, which is, again, just mind-blowing that your computer's going to automatically translate something on a video call. Like, we are living in the science fiction future we grew up with, Jay. It's absolutely nuts.
I can come to provide some stuff though, Dave. And a rare then. Dialect rare to pay for us and Delarame.
For the love of God, Jay. No, not like that. More like emotional get left out. Or, and I'm going to talk about Secret Project in a minute, something that happened with Secret Project where a common phrase got misconstrued because it had been translated out of English into Spanish and back into English again.
So, for the listeners who may not be aware of Secret Project, can you explain who that is and what happened?
So, Secret Project is one of my favourite people in the creative space. A very close friend. We've met in real life a couple of times. She's a wonderful artist. She does things with AI art that, you know, most people couldn't even dream of. And we'll share a link to her website below. I love how she infuses it with Japanese culture and a couple of the other things that she's doing as well. We'll share her website. She was using a phrase, so talking about essentially giving up. And she used the phrase "drop the towel," and it took me a moment or two to work out what she meant. But she meant, you know, throw in the towel, and like that's a phrase commonly associated with giving up or moving on from something that's futile, and it comes from boxing matches, I believe. Could be wrong on that, but I believe that's where it comes from. You know, where if your fighter's getting a beating, but he's not giving up, you throw in the towel to stop the fight and give up on behalf of your fighter. And that's what she meant. But the translation had turned throw in the towel, which probably meant throw in the towel in Spanish. But when it was translated from English to Spanish and then back again from Spanish to English, it had turned from throw in the towel to drop the towel.
Have you ever answered the door and dropped the towel, Dave?
Here we are trying to have a serious conversation about the complexity of language, and all you can think about is a towel dropping. Oh dear. It's like the dressing gown being full on open, or the robe for our American listeners, the robe you put on in the morning before you get dressed, hence dressing gown.
The robe? The dressing gown? Don't you mean a house coat? Or is it a body cloth?
Body cloth. Also, house coat. I really like that. I've never heard it called that before. And whilst we're talking about things that are the same thing that's got different names depending where you're from, I find that a fascinating thing about language in general. And certainly in the UK, I think I said something, it was a moment ago when we started this recording, but I think I said something about dialects and, you know, regional language in the UK. And it absolutely fascinates me how the same thing can be called so many different names in such a small place. Like, that's the power of language in a way. You know, how many different names are there for like a bread roll in the UK? It's insane. Not even the UK, just mainland England. It's absolutely insane.
I absolutely knew that you were going to go there with the bread roll. I knew it. Is it a tea cake? Is it a balm cake? Is it a bap? Is it a currant tea cake? Is it a cob? What is it? What is it actually?
It's a bread roll, Jay. That's what it is. It's just a bread roll. But it's an example that extends beyond the UK, right? It's an example that a lot of people outside of the UK have heard of. Whereas there's a lot of other things that are colloquial, that are local to the UK that you might not be aware of if you weren't in the UK. And yeah, you know, it rolls into food, doesn't it? Not just because of the bread roll, but it's almost, oh, it's got me thinking that has. So there's a link between language and food, and that's interesting. I mean, correct me if you think I'm wrong on that, because it's a thought that has literally just popped into my head as we're talking. But yeah, there seems to be a link between language and food.
It's not just a bread roll, though, is it? You can't say, can I have a bacon on a bread roll? That you'll be met with what kind of bread roll? A tea cake, a balm, a bap, a flipping cob, a panini, a roly-poly bready-woly. But yeah, language and food are
massively intertwined. Again, it's about, I think it's about consumption. We consume language, we consume food. Anything we consume does seem to be tightly woven into language. That's interesting. I wonder what else there is.
God, the looks you'd get if you asked for bacon on a bread roll in this country. I can only imagine, Jay. I wouldn't even want to ask for just bacon on a bread roll. And the consumption thing, that's a really interesting point, because I've been thinking about that since you said it. And art, music, books, TV, film, maybe not dance so much, maybe not all types of music, but yeah, they're heavily intertwined and amalgamated together. And the reason that I kind of wanted to talk about music a little bit, I might have said this earlier in the episode, but they found a 35 to 43,000 year old flute, a bone flute, recently. And it kind of throws some spanners into the way that we think that humans have communicated and built up our communication, and suggests that musical communication could have come before language, which I also find incredibly fascinating. I mean, this consumption aspect also wraps into what we're talking about, what we might lose if we lost a language. The intermingling, it's all rather interesting. I'm going to need to take some time to think about that consumption point, Jay. That was really well made. I said that like it was surprising. You always make really good points, and I'm going to stop this message before we hit 90 seconds.
Personally, I feel what we've done as humans over the years, as centuries, as we've been evolving, is we've gone from very simple communication through just emotion, probably music, humming, singing, into a more intellectual form of communication, which is spoken language and the written word. It's almost like we've gone from the bottom and it's sort of risen up our bodies. Like it's gone from the heart and it's risen up to our brains. What happens after that? I feel like AI is going to be the next step in that evolution, because it's encouraging people to think differently. It's encouraging people to operate in a different form. And what happens when it moves out of our brain? Like it started in our heart, it's moved to our brain. So now we've got our hearts and our brains. Then what happens? What happens to all those things then?
I don't know, Jay. I really don't know. And I'm not sure anyone else does. And if anyone tells you they know, I think they're misrepresenting themselves and their thoughts to themselves and to you. But that's a sidetrack I don't need to dive down. I think it's finding the balance, isn't it, between feelings and thoughts. And that's going to be the most important thing from an individual perspective. And I think AI will help with that. If we start using it like our personal assistant, we start wrapping it into all of our communications, our AIs will start to know us, and they'll help us have more insight into ourselves, which will hopefully help us manage that balance between thinking and thoughts and words versus, feelings and emotions. Anyway, fingers crossed that's what it does anyway.
I mean, for me, AI feels like a new vessel. So we've transferred all our knowledge and consciousness into AI. And then if humanity gets wiped out, God forbid, then all that remains is AI. And we would exist inside that, waiting for some beings to come along and interact with it or activate it, possibly learn from it. I wonder if that would happen.
I think that does potentially happen, Jay. I think it does, because it stood. I also think that's one of the reasons that we, from my perspective anyway, one of the reasons that we spoke about online personas and how everyone has one. I think that's the challenge there for humanity's consciousness to be stored digitally. It means we need to put our conscious out wholeheartedly in the digital world, and I don't think we're doing that yet. So I think that would be a very skewed view of humanity. But I think it's what AI is, isn't it? It's a collection of all of the language, all of the data, all of the knowledge, all of the information, all of the thoughts, and then it seeks to find patterns and understanding within that massive amount of data. Maybe AI is the next evolution. Just maybe AI, as a rule, is the next evolution of language. I don't know, that's really interesting. I think what I'm learning is that Spokenomics as an episode probably needed to be half a series, because we're getting close to the end of this episode, Jay, and there's still so much to talk about. So much.
I'm not so sure that AI is more about the way that language is structured over the actual language that it uses, because it can do it in any language, can't it? Doesn't AI have the ability to, and especially these large language models, don't they have the ability to communicate in multiple languages?
Different languages are structured in different ways for many reasons, and that's a fascinating thought. How would an alien life form approach a database of all of the different languages with the different structures if they found that in the future and there was no humanity? Anyway, we can't afford to get sidetracked by that thought, much as I'd love to. Maybe that's a topic for another time. I must summarise this episode, Jay. In this episode, we explored the evolving nature of language and how slang, urban dialects, and internet culture are reshaping the way we communicate. With music, AI, and social media accelerating linguistic shifts, words and expressions are being adopted and adapted faster than ever. We also looked at the deeper connection between language, culture, and history, considering how the loss of a language can impact art, music, and heritage. As AI-powered translation becomes more advanced, we discussed whether this ease of communication comes at the cost of emotional nuance. Finally, we examined how language has shifted over time, from emotional expression to intellectual thought, and considered AI's role in this ongoing evolution. Whether as a tool or something more, its impact on communication is undeniable. Thanks for listening to episode 4 of series 3, Spokenomics. Please take a moment to follow or subscribe, like and share our podcast. It makes a huge difference. And feel free to continue the conversation in the comments. You can find all of our relevant links in the description. Jay's been Jay, I've been Dave, and we'll see you next time for another episode of Voice Notes Suck.
You've been listening to Voice Notes Suck with Jay and Dave.